think we're ready. Good evening, everyone. I'm Amy Porter, and I want to thank each of you for being here tonight for the official launch of my new book, Anatomy of Sound, An Invitation to Discover the Inner Musician. This is a full circle moment for me personally, and for the Anatomy of Sound journey that began 23 years ago, basically this time every year. We're celebrating this launch tonight here at Carolyn Nussbaum Music Company, which is especially meaningful to me. Carolyn has supported artists and the entire flute community with heart and vision, and now we get to share this chapter together. I want to applaud Carolyn. Yeah. I also would like to tell you, I want to tell you a little bit about Carolyn Nussbaum Company, whose mission statement resonates deeply with me. Unleash your flute's center. Transform your musical world. And when I saw that, I said, wait, that's what I'm about as well. So I encourage you all to discover with me for a moment, the legacy of Carolyn Nussbaum Music Company. Founded in 1996 by visionary flutist and educator Carolyn Nussbaum, this company has become a trusted name among flutists worldwide for over 27 years. From aspiring beginners to seasoned professionals, they've consistently resonated outwardly, this company, with a shared love for music. Here in the store and online, you can immerse yourself in a carefully curated collection of flutes, piccolos, head joints, and accessories. From the budding beginner to the accomplished professional, their instruments are tailored to every stage of your musical journey. Carolyn and her entire staff, I can tell you, deeply appreciate the artistry and precision behind superior instruments. They collaborate with us. They collaborate with the flute makers globally. Their team is a collection of employees, and it's a collective of educated flute players, maybe a trombonist thrown in for good fun, experienced musicians, and dedicated educators. Whether it's choosing an instrument or refining technique, this staff offers personalized insights and support for your musical journey. And their offerings can accommodate various budgets, ensuring that the superior instruments and the resources are available within everyone's reach. This store also has an expansive sheet music collection, from solo pieces to mixed ensemble, classical to contemporary. I've just seen it, from Taylor Swift and Adele to Celtic. They provide an array that satisfies all musical tastes. And with constant updates, which is so important, you'll always find both the latest works that we need, and as a teacher, I know we constantly have new music coming in, and then they have the timeless classics here as well. They also offer authorized repairs. I saw this incredible universe of expert brand authorized repairs, and then they have bags that I can't get enough of, accessories, and essentials, everything from cleaning kits to stand to tuners. So I know you're all excited. Just know that the Carolyn Nussbaum Music Company is more than a store. It's a sanctuary where music and community flourish. So dive into finding out more about this legacy known as Carolyn Nussbaum, and see why this store is a cherished destination for flutists around the globe. Thank you. Okay, so let me start by telling you why I wrote this book. I didn't want to create just another method book. I wanted to write a manual for musicianship that integrates sound, body, and spirit. This book is from my original 2012 2-DVD set, back when DVDs were really popular, and I decided I should brush it off, get that script back out, and turn it into a book. And of course, if you've ever written anything, you realize I have a lot to add. So I've had it added chapters, so it's part memoir, part workbook, and part map. It's designed to help you find your own inner musician. It also is infused with information from the 23 years of Anatomy of Sound workshop, AOS-Wellness, the website we created, the University of Michigan, This information comes from teaching alongside my partner, Laura Dwyer, in the business, and the late, great Gerald Schweibert, movement specialist. And it incorporates everything I've learned about music and resilience. And we all need resilience. So this is resilience through teaching and healing and breathing. So let me show you, after I get a little water here, I'm going to show you my breathing buddy. This is my breathing buddy, and yes, that's it on the cover. It's a symbol of what the book is really, really about. Centering your breath and your voice and your story in music. So I'm going to keep it right here so you can check in if you realize you're not breathing, you've stopped breathing. So this is us, really. I'll talk about it a little later, but it's for touchless teaching. It's for teachers to put in the drawer and get out. And every time you needed to coach your student on posture or breathing, it's going to just serve as a reminder. I often just hold it up and the student automatically starts remembering to breathe. So I'll just put it right here as your reminder to breathe. Okay, I'd like to share a few excerpts. I'm going to read some parts of chapters that seem to resonate most with the musicians that I've worked with. But first, I thought the introduction would be as good a place as any to start as my place to begin. So I would just love to read the introduction to you because it will give you a little bit of information about where we're going. Welcome to a transformative space, a workshop whose roots run deep into the fertile soil of the University of Michigan, fondly known as the Anatomy of Sound. For 2 decades, this workshop became a sanctuary for flutists, bridging gaps between amateurs and seasoned professionals, students and educators. In 2022, the world shifted and embraced new modes of connection. We transitioned this AOS-rich curriculum into an online format and making it more accessible beyond the walls of a traditional classroom. The principles we teach resonate not only through the flute, but echo in the hearts of diversely talented musicians, seeking their own unique voices. Each participant, no matter their level, they arrived with a yearning to uncover a deeper meaning in their art. Picture a student, once hesitant, now radiating confidence as they release their breath into a melody. A budding musician, lost in a sea of notes, suddenly discovers that their body is not merely a vessel for sound, but a powerful tool in storytelling through music. After stepping out of this workshop, many participants find that they not only enhanced their craft, but forged a profound connection to their personal experiences, leading to holistic transformations that ripple through their lives. They leave not as flutists, but as healers, creators, and individuals filled with joy and insight. This guide serves as an invitation to you, a resource woven with lessons on tone, posture, musicality, and expression. Within its pages, you will uncover pearls of wisdom, each a stepping stone on your journey to understand the intricate relationship between your body and the sound it produces. It's my hope that as you delve into this collection, you'll uncover insights that resonate, sparking curiosity and exploration of your personal sound research. And while self-exploration is a vital piece of this journey, I encourage you to seek out a teacher or a mentor who can guide you as you navigate this personal experience. The Anatomy of Sound is more than a curriculum. It's a phenomenon that intertwines music and the marvels of the human body. In this interconnected realm, musicians learn to harmonize the technical aspects of music with body awareness, a few anatomy lessons, and movement. Much like an artist blends colors on a palette, we'll discover how to balance our musical expressions with physical presence, yielding a holistic approach to sound production. With the tools and resources I'll share, I aim to ensure you feel not just capable, but comfortable as you explore the art of playing your instrument. Enter this musician's classroom and a world that some students liken to the rigorous training grounds of basic military drill. A physician once remarked that pursuing a music major was far more challenging than surviving medical school. I was at Thanksgiving dinner one night, and this doctor just turned to me and said, "Professor Porter, I couldn't do it. I was a bassoonist. I went to med school instead." So there was my real story, that this is rigorous training as a musician. So welcome then to an environment that fosters resilience and discovery, stripped of competitive pressures. Here we are united as a supportive community, uplifted by shared experiences, all bound by the lovely language of music. How does one arrive at such a revelation? Can we occasionally pause to reflect on the journey and declare that what we've built is methodically spiritual? Looking back can illuminate the path forward. My personal journey, looking back, took root one day in 2001, a day that ignited this movement and took root. It laid the cornerstone for what would become the Anatomy of Sound. I vividly recall teaching a lesson to a sophomore at U of M, and she was technically sound, and but she lacked an emotional core, and frustration twisted within me, and I witnessed her struggle. As teachers, we position ourselves not only as instructors but vessels of our students' potential, and in that moment of sheer exasperation, my voice rose above the calm and compelling her to realize her untapped power. I remember leaning over at the waist, and in a very soft scream, I said, "It's the anatomy of sound. You have to play with everything inside of you and envision it before you play it and before it materializes, and feel it before you hear it. Transform those notes into a story and infuse it with you." And that day birthed that revelation. I recorded it on a simple Post-it notes. Remember when we had monitors, big computer monitors, and we wrote on Post-it notes anyway. We put the Post-it note on the monitor, and that's what I did. And I wrote Anatomy of Sound on it. It would guide me through the years, a mantra, if you will, that shaped the essence of my teaching. Through a serendipitous series of encounters, the workshop evolved. I crossed paths with University professor Gerald Schweibert. We met at a faculty meeting, and his insights into movement complemented my musical teaching perfectly. I had Alexander technique for 4 years, but in no way could I teach it. I had yoga. I had Pilates. He was able to train Detroit Lions football players to fully throw the football. He could teach dressage riders to fully experience their energy with the horse. Gerald Schweibert taught everything. Not one thing did he say was going to work. Not one method. It was all methods. So I'm diverting from my book, but that's what this launch is about. So through a serendipitous series of encounters, our collaboration became an unchoreographed dance of discovery as we each followed our instincts and joined forces, asking each other, "Shall I go for it?" And he'd say, "Yeah, let's go for it." And each time we'd step into a realm of unknown beauty and musical truth. But even this fusion of talents lacked a certain vital element. I realized I needed to infuse our workshop with a greater understanding of mind and body. Thus came the decision to integrate yoga into our sessions. Now, don't forget, this is 2003. Nobody was doing that at the time. I enlisted Kathy Apple, an extraordinary doctoral student at the time, who brought physical and spiritual benefits of yoga directly to flutists, renewing their bodies and spirits. And after she left, legendary Laura Dwyer stepped into this role, teaching our participants to liberate their breath and connect with their body's rhythm, while quieting the incessant chatter of the mind. The final touch to our curriculum was inviting esteemed guest artists to share their expertise and wisdom. From year to year, we cultivated a tapestry of musicians who brought new flavors to our community, nurturing creativity and strengthening our bond. My first guests in the first 5 years had to be my teachers and my dearest friends. So I appreciate everyone whoever came to the 20 years of Anatomy of Sound. As we embarked on our journey, fitting the pieces together, each year blossoming new growth for people, profound connections being made, and enriching experiences. Over the years, we celebrated our guests, and if you, as you delve into this rich tapestry, woven with shared experiences from people aged 21 to 85, I invite you to absorb the wisdom they too have discovered. Together, let's explore the true essence of Anatomy of Sound curriculum. Keep in mind always the present you are constructing. It should be the future you want. Alice Walker, from the Temple of My Familiar. I'll read a little bit from Chapter 1, Mirrors. And these are all portals that we pass through in our life. So I started with mirrors because we should all look at ourselves. In the kaleidoscope world of artistry and self-expression, the metaphor of a mirror transcends mere reflection. It becomes the lens through which we examine not only our music and our technique, but our very selves. It is within this sacred space that I chose to anchor our opening chapter. Here we will journey together, pondering the questions that arise when we look in the mirror, and we struggle to see the artistry that we aspire to achieve. We can be hard on ourselves, and one of the major questions asked, especially by frustrated younger musicians, is, why can't I get it now? Right now. I first began the book by saying the beginning of awareness. So we're going to talk about the beginning of my awareness. I first learned about movement and body awareness at the Mozarteum Academy in Salzburg, Austria, at the tender age of 20. And that's a very tender age. Those early morning movement classes became a sanctuary of enlightenment, awakening my understanding of the body's connection to creativity. By the time I stumbled into the world of yoga at age 23, I felt as if I had been gifted a treasure map, guiding me towards new realms of awareness and balance. In my flute studio, a large mirror stands as a silent witness to my students' struggles and triumphs, illuminating not just their faces, but also the invisible barriers that they face in their musical journey. As they stand before the mirror, I see not just a performer, but a reflection of their potential, their fears, their artistry waiting to unfold. That's why I chose the title Mirrors, because much like glass, we can only see ourselves clearly when we acknowledge our faults and gifts alike. Let's return to the foundational idea then of being a beginner every day and have the beginner's mind. In a world that often celebrates mastery and immediate results, I insist that we all embrace our beginner's mindset. If we approach our practice sessions with the humility of a novice, we open ourselves up to the vast oceans of creativity and possibilities that lie before us. Long tones, akin to stretching our muscles upon waking, form the bedrock of our practice. These moments spent honing our foundational skills are not trivial. They remind us that progress emerges not from frantic effort, but from steady, mindful repetition. Much like our bodies respond to a warm-up, our instruments resonate differently when we treat them with care and patience. Every scale, every technical exercise, every note we play is 1 inch closer to artistic fluency. When we adopt a foundational perspective, we find the power to shed old habits. I'll talk about that soon. old habits and cultivate new ones. Magic occurs when we dare to forgive ourselves for our past mistakes, allowing ourselves to grow without the weight of all the expectations bearing down on our shoulders. There is a profound transformation waiting to happen. One day you wake up and find that you can sing that phrase now, or you can play that phrase effortlessly. As mentors and students, we often navigate the murky waters of inspiration together. I find many flutists cast their gaze on me in search of guidance. Yet I'm merely their mirror, reflecting back their innate abilities, urging them to explore their artistry that dwells within. So in a serendipitous moment, another serendipitous moment, I was on the phone and with Laura Dwyer, and she said, Amy, I'm in a gift store, and I'm looking at a plaque. And guess what it says? Teachers turn mirrors into windows. So she gifted me that plaque. This phrase, it hangs in my studio, that plaque. And this phrase encapsulates our current journey. It calls us not to only look inward, but peer beyond ourselves to see the broader vista of what is possible. In our age of instant gratification, where information flows like a river and it's in a nanosecond, it's essential to recognize the disconnect between our longing for immediate musical results and the time required to cultivate genuine artistry. Expecting instant results from ourselves is a disservice to our growth. Just as we cannot rush the blossoming of a flower, we must also grant ourselves the grace to expand and to shrink in our journey to the stage. What appears glamorous and effortless from the audience's perspective often belies years of dedication and struggle it took to reach that pinnacle. When I look in the mirror, I acknowledge the effort it took to transform a frantic pursuit of perfection into a disciplined journey of self-discovery. I'd like to now share a little bit. I'll touch pretty much on every chapter just briefly. Chapter 2, Windows, are the examples from my life. And the quote that I chose for this chapter is from Rilke, from the Book of Hours, Love Poems to God. There is only one journey, going inside yourself. Welcome to some examples of opening windows into your world. We'll be figuring out what works for you as you translate your life story into a musical narrative. I'm reminded of a cherished piece of advice from my choir director, who once proclaimed, "When in doubt, sing out." Yes, those words echoed through my mind, bridging the gap between childhood innocence and the nuanced complexity of adolescence. When I was just 5 years old, singing was as natural to me as breathing. I belted out tunes at the top of my lungs, reveling in the joy of performance, blissfully unencumbered by self-doubt that I was singing all the wrong words to Doe a Deer from The Sound of Music. But fast forward 10 years to age 15, and that unfiltered exuberance had transformed into a tightrope walk of anxiety and fear, where every note became a minefield and every performance an exercise in humility. Here are some examples of my windows into my life that has contributed to my musical storytelling. From acting class as a teenager came the lessons of mime and imitation. These lessons provided an environment for learning to engage an audience without words. Having been a swimmer growing up, I had the ability to almost breathe underwater. It's an interesting feeling of lung expansion. You should try going the whole length of the pool, right? And from working at a stable, I rode for 8 years, and I rode competitively in Western horse shows. I was able to understand the role of intuition and broadcasting energy through my body to the horse. Those animals are extremely sensitive to energy. Playing the trumpet for 8 years. I'm a trumpet player in a flute player's body, I think. Playing the trumpet for 8 years gave me that feeling that the flute could sound like a trumpet. And from singing, alongside my parents sometimes in the choir. From singing came the ability to phrase naturally, where the voice naturally takes us. If you've ever sung, you know that the voice just naturally goes to the note you should go to. From my father, who was in the Navy, came lessons of sailing with the wind, and the appreciation for his instrument, the grand piano. From my British mother came lessons in stage deportment and opera plots, odd things that you realized one day you actually needed. Yoga, a transforming experience for me at age 23. What I thought was a good stretch class with breathing was taught in such a generous way that it inspired me to create my own personal life and spiritual life. And then I learned about the chakras and that third eye, right here known as meditation, the fifth chakra, the base of the throat, and then the sixth chakra, this third eye. It's located between the eyebrows, and it's considered the gateway to the higher consciousness and intuition and inner wisdom. This journey, fraught with uncertainty and the sharp sting of perceived failures, illuminated a pivotal truth. My ego was not just a silent partner. It was in its infancy, clumsily shaping my artistic identity. I learned that raw talent wasn't enough. And I'll pause right there to tell you that my teacher at the time looked straight past me at my mother. She looked at my mother and said, "Your daughter plays on her talent alone. She'll have to practice." I was astonished, but it was great for me to hear. I needed to actively listen and engage with my teachers, absorbing their wisdom. And with each performance, I realized, and here I'm still in my infancy, I realized the importance of deeply understanding my own life's journey so that I could weave it into a musical narrative that resonates with others. And so through the metaphorical windows of our experiences, we can begin to uncover melodies that define us. By gazing through these window panes towards the intricate tapestry of our life stories, I invite you to explore the suggestions I'll be laying out for you that can transform your performances, enriching both your artistry and your authentic self. But before we delve deeper into our explanation, allow me to pose a few essential questions that you can write in your reflection journal in the book that will help frame your artistic journey. Why do you feel an intrinsic need to perform in public? What drives you to play an instrument in an ensemble or act on a stage? How does your unique personality imbue you with the confidence, yet the humility to engage in these public expressions of art? Well, in search for my musical truth, I find the dictionary an often overlooked treasure chest of insight. So we're going to start with definitions. Definitions offer a grounding perspective on terms that shape our mission and performance. So let's explore 3 key definitions of 3 words that will serve as our guides: perform, confidence, and ego. Perform. To carry out an execution, fulfill a task, fulfill a function such as a wedding ceremony, to deliver a performance before an audience, or to accomplish goals and get things done. So I'm going to perform. You see how concrete and easy it sounds. Confidence, another word that sounds easy in the dictionary. The freedom from doubt and belief in one's abilities. A feeling of trust in oneself or others. I have confidence in you. And an optimistic state of hope about the future. I have confidence in the economy. Ego. Now that is an incredible word. The 3 definitions here in the dictionary are an inflated sense of pride relative to others, the conscious awareness of one's identity. Ego, the aspect of the mind that governs self-awareness. And I feel that in some circles, and so does Laura, the word ego has been turned into a bad word. I think ego breeds confidence. Ego's a natural part of our psyche, and part of my confidence and success is my use of ego and learning when to check it at the door. But you have to survive your ego being checked. With these definitions in mind, let's acknowledge the breadth of these terms as we navigate our emotional landscape. Ice cream and sunshine. I remember these words being put into practice in 1985, perform, confidence, and ego. This is the year I attended the Mozarteum Academy in Salzburg, Austria, and my new English-speaking American colleagues were Trudy and Harold. You find all the English-speaking Americans at these classes that are taught in German. And they became my best pals that summer in the flute class. It was such a memorable and impressionable experience as a classical music student in Salzburg that my ego and my confidence and performance skills were front and center. One bright sunny morning at the Academy, I played the sonatine by Henri Dutilleux for Monsieur Alain Marion. He was the assistant to the famous flutist and pedagogue Jean-Pierre Rampal at the Conservatoire National Supérieur de Musique et Danse in Paris. When I'd finished my performance, my ego said, I played well. I'm confident he'll like it. He smiled from his chair just off to my right, and he said, bon. And after the applause, I walked back to my seat, and he began to speak. I was shocked. He said that class was going to go outside and take a break for ice cream. Needless to say, my confidence was off the charts. I cleaned out my instrument, I put it in the case, and I happily joined the class of 8 other people and walked to the manicured entrance of the Mozarteum and its stone walls, waltzing into the street to find the local ice cream truck. I remember standing on the left side of Monsieur Marion. As he ordered ice cream, I was trying to make sure he heard me say that I only ate chocolate ice cream. I heard him say, vanilla. And my heart sank. I was going to have to eat vanilla ice cream. Thank goodness for the cone, I thought. We walked back to the entrance of the Mozarteum, and I stood against the wall. Mr. Marion sat in front of me and everyone, he silently licking our cones. Ami, is the sun melting your ice cream? I looked at my cone and said, no, I think I have everything cleaned up on my cone. He said, my cone has many drips. Do you see how the sunshine is melting my ice cream? Then he said, do you like the taste of the vanilla ice cream? And I smiled, said, oui. Okay, flute class, please go inside when you're finished with your break. And he left down the path back into the building. It was a lovely transition between the break. It was right before lunch, and it was the final minutes of the morning session, and Harold and Trudy and I posed. We had our picture taken in front of the doors as a memento that I still have today. I'll never forget that twinge that I was somehow special. I went back to my seat in the back row. I heard a bellowing voice from the stage. Alain Marion had taken his seat in his professor chair and was smiling, laughing, shouting in his thickest French-inspired English, Ami! It stopped my heart. It was so loud. Please return to the stage and play Dutilleux again. This time with ice cream and sunshine. His outstretched arm and laughter made my heart drop. I no longer had confidence. My ego was in the trash, along with the napkins from the ice cream. The pianist for the master class was laughing. Harold and Trudy were not, and their eyes were as wide as saucers. As I walked up to the front, I played in class that day as an example to all about investing my life experiences into music. Without that, my music had no soul. And that's what he heard. I had to incorporate every flavor, every aroma, every sunrise, every natural thing in my life into art. My first performance had just been about the notes and getting everything in the right place. I understood from that day forward I needed to find the door through which my own inspiration could flow. So I reached into some practices that were both healing and empowering. And I broke down some walls and continued on my path. So now we're going to go into some of my breathing buddy in chapter 3. I want to turn to talking about studying and teaching the breath. And I'll just mention that everyone here has the table of contents. I think you're linked to it there online as well. If you get the Kindle edition, you can also click. They've linked up the table of contents with the chapter. So if you do have the Kindle edition, you can click on and just go right to what I'm talking about. I am a product of my teachers from Alexander Technique, and I studied this technique for 4 years at Juilliard. I credit my flute teachers, conductors, and chamber music coaches who all taught me to breathe as I moved. And everyone was highly appropriate with their hands-on approach. Hands-on me approach. I now teach from a base of knowledge I call touchless teaching. And I'm learning to teach with anatomical knowledge from physician and flutist, otolaryngologist and surgeon, Dr. David Brown, my student. Through discussions in flute lessons where he'd say, Amy, do you want me to draw the tongue? I said, okay. And I didn't know. This is the tongue. This is the part we know about, the part we don't know about. So there's so much to learn that through discussions in flute lessons and meeting other doctors, I realized they all had 3D simulators and we had nothing. I was able to develop a teaching tool, my breathing buddy. And this is a lung rib cage diaphragm simulator. It's a reminder of the diaphragmatic movement. And it provides a visual for people to take to memory. So in the performing arts, the breath is usually taught by using touch, right? You walk up to someone and show them, or by seeing the diaphragm drop on a video. And I feel there is now no reason for a teacher to bring up gender, body type, size, or shape when showing someone how to breathe properly. Some people are more comfortable with teachers coming into their personal space than others, but often it's hard to know how a student feels about being touched. And it's hard to know how much anatomical knowledge a teacher has. So by providing a portable and educational tool, I aim to bridge the gap between anatomical knowledge and artistic practice by seeing the diaphragm moving. So I'm just going to put my, this is one of those, like I can clean my camera or my computer, but it was the perfect thing to inflate my breathing buddy. So you can see that here you can, here in the room, I'm sure you can see that this is dropping. And then as I blow out, it's deflating. And what we want is to keep that diaphragm dropped. And while we're blowing, to ensure that we never completely run out of air. By providing a portable and educational tool, this ensures that those without a background in anatomy have a deeper understanding of breath control for both therapeutic and educational purposes. Additionally, it provides those with traumatic triggers a more comfortable way to learn. Conductors hold up the simulator to give the group the answers they need to teach breathing properly and without the need for touch or verbose or flowery words. At the Anatomy of Sound workshop, we would work with people to make sure they understood the inhalation was with the music and the exhalation was the expression of that music. The late, great AOS movement specialist and life coach Gerald Schweibert would always punctuate this phrase with a wink and smile, and he'd say, air is free, and there's lots of it. As my students famously say, oh, I have to breathe deeply every single time. Yes, we do. We have to be centered on the breath for everything to work. So I'm going to give you my 4 different breaths. And then there's an extra one you can have. The panic breath when, when my mother was driving and she'd almost crashed the car was, right? So there's that breath. And then there's this lower breath, which is the gossip breath. Like, did you hear what she said? Right? Then there's that overeating breath, which is a little lower, which is, oh my gosh, I ate too much. And then there's this breath down here, the long, deep, slow breath, that breath you take when you realize something great has happened or something special occurs. And you might take that sincere breath. And that's the deep breath. That's the breath we choose most often. And then the auxiliary breath you could also take is this nose breath. Breathing in through the nose is a helpful breath when you want to add air. So I just wanted to kind of touch a little bit on the My Breathing Buddy examples. Great. Okay. All right. I'm going to skip over here to Chapter 6. The journey of the airstream is, I've always talked about the journey of the airstream. As we deepen our exploration, we must talk about the journey of the airstream, that invisible force that propels music from our instruments. I often speak of flow, an essential quality akin to the movement of a river, carrying within it the music and the emotion and the intention of the player. And my students frequently receive compliments about their fluidity, and this is a direct result of the emphasis we place on understanding and mastering the airstream. Consider the image of spinning your thread of air attentively, directing it towards a certain point, a specific point, like down to your left elbow or to the music stand. And by installing intention behind your air as you produce, you open doors to deeper connections within the music. Dynamic contrasts, emotional nuances emerge as you flow through phrases, allowing your experiences, joy, sorrow, excitement, to seep into your playing. Harnessing the flow, whether it's exciting flow, joyous flow, sorrowful flow, that air should never feel constrained while you play. So, do you dare imitate a trumpet or an oboe sound? This exploration also sharpens your skills but enhances your awareness of musical textures, enriching your understanding when collaborating with fellow musicians. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to find flow in the body. Laura Dwyer is actually going to have you find flow. She asks, how do we achieve this elusive state of flow? Musicians often receive instructions to blow through the phrase or play between the notes. I say that all the time. Yet what does this embodied experience truly mean? Understanding the transition between the inhale and the exhale, that's crucial. I always use the example of Olympian Michael Phelps. One of his coaches explained what made him a truly great swimmer was not his height or his strength, but it was the kick turn transition from the wall back into the lane. So to begin the exploration, I would ask you to allow your arm to fall beside you if you want to just sit, or you can even stand. And at home, you can do this too. And as you exhale, lift your arm all the way up to the sky. You could do both arms. You could do one arm. Just lift and artfully turn the hand and begin to bring it back down. And the key lies in eliminating stillness between these actions. So do it again and ask, what happens during the exchange of up to down? What happens? And what possibilities exist in this transition of momentary fun? Discovering the magic of these artful interchanges not only applies to body movements, but translates directly to musical phrases as well. Graceful transitions create a seamless continuum of sound. They allow for the dimensions of expression to shine through. The practice of transitioning smoothly between musical notes may be likened to the art of yoga, where conscious movement facilitates a deeper connection to one's breath. I know for me, I like to exhale the phrase into the audience while I'm transitioning to the next breath. The audience is hearing the ringing of the notes, right? I leave it, and while I'm breathing, I'm breathing underneath that resonance and electricity. Okay. Let's just read a few more things. Page 52. Oh, platforms. I must talk about the jaw. And I must talk about the bad tone day. The flute is an instrument of ethereal beauty, characterized by its bright, sonorous tones that can evoke a plethora of emotions. And this chapter here delves into the nuance of playing the flute and the production of articulation and what we all know is the bad tone day. So I talk about the dance of the tongue being on a platform. So the jaw would be your platform. And quite often I get people who are chewing and removing this platform in order to say t or do. So the thick tapestry of sound from the flute does not solely rely on air. This articulation, often dubbed as tonguing, serves as our personal fingerprint on every note. Each player possesses a unique physiological structure. The shape of our jaws, the dynamic of our tongue, and even how quickly we speak contributes to our articulated sound. Mastering this art of articulation does not happen overnight. It's a skill forged through dedicated practice, and I'll add that if you don't practice, the tongue is the first thing to leave. When we articulate notes, it's essential to think of them as having a left side and a right side. The left side is where the explosive burst happens, and the right side settles that note into clarity. If we neglect this critical moment of articulation, we may inadvertently release a hiss first, rather than that radiant note that we seek. We may end a note too dryly or with too much taper, and we need to discover the ends of notes as well as the beginnings. So to refine articulation's distinct language, we must tame our own Nessie, the Loch Ness monster, or that playful creature in our mouth that lurks within our mouth, a tongue. It's described in various terms by my students. Here we go. Heavy. My tongue is big. Wandering. And even invasive. The jaw is literally chewing, as I said earlier, to articulate earlier. It's chewing to articulate, and the body is creating saliva, and everything's confusing. The humor in these descriptors reflects the very real struggle that many face while learning the flute. One day, a fresh-faced student lamented that, "My tongue has taken over." I seized that opportunity to transform her distress in that moment by creating Tina. I named her Tina. So what creates articulation, by the way? The diaphragm, diaphragmatic pressure, and the tongue simply releases the air. So the tongue is not an attack, like that. It's a release. So I said, let's guide Tiny Tina. And I instructed her during her practice. And so I guided her in her practice to play Taffanel Gobert with a single tonguing technique that I'll show you right now. So Loch Ness Monster can be controlled. So just by ha-ha, then you put tutu. Tiny Tina taps in her tutu on her tiptoes. So I'm playing from Moïse Etude at Exercises, page 16, number 12, but you could do Taffanel 4. Now, hear how I sound like doo-doo, right? I don't have any release of a beautiful left or a right side because I'm using this diaphragmatic pressure. I don't need it to sound beautiful, and it's not going to. So there's, I could continue on, but it's directly from here, uninterrupted, through the chest, through the lips. Now, adding Tiny Tina, she's just popping in on her tutu, on her tiptoes, kind of infiltrating that airstream. If you have, right, that's gone too far. If you go, that's not far enough. So Tiny Tina seemed to work, and something miraculous happened. A bright and effortless sound emerged as if Tiny Tina herself had found the rhythm. Okay, the other thing we want to talk about is the bad tone day in this chapter. And again, this chapter is all about platforms. So I called it a platform again because the jaw, but also the tone is where we think it should be every day, right? So we're going to come back every day to that same sound, right? No. The bad tone day. An uninvited guest. Every musician, regardless of skill level, will experience what we can only call a bad tone day. These days feel as if the universe conspired to snatch away the brilliance of yesterday's sound, leaving you with a dull echo of frustration. During these moments of disarray, self-reflection is crucial. The questions flood in. Am I blowing at the same angle? Am I using the same air pressure as yesterday? Is that pressure less or more because I'm tired and stressed? Am I in the same environment or circumstances of yesterday? Have I eaten the same food with the same amount of salt or sugar in it? Are my lips drier than yesterday? Is a different weather pattern outside? Yes, more than air or any physical consideration. The most significant observation is that I'm not the same person today that I was yesterday. That musicianship evolves, fluctuating naturally like the tides. This self-forgiveness can only be one of the hardest maneuvers to enact, but it's essential. Allow yourself to embark on today with renewed purpose, understanding that imperfections are part of the journey. So as we confront bad tone days, we can also learn lean into the idea of this bowl of resonance. So utilizing our collarbone and the chest cavity to enhance the depth of our tone in order to sing will help you. By shifting the focus from throat tension to well-structured phrasing, like singing, we unlock yet another layer of musical expression that will help your bad tone day. Phrasing then becomes the bedrock of your artistry. So, establish your jaw as a platform for playing. Tame your tongue with intentional techniques. Diffuse the bad tone day, and be open to a steady evolution of awareness in articulations due to your native language. Okay, I know we're gonna move through this quickly. I'm going to talk about understanding fear in music. It's in chapter 10. So it's right after I talk about green light, red light, green light stories, which are just fascinating. The stories we tell ourselves. The stories you can tell yourself, they have the power to shape your experiences as musicians. By recognizing and reframing your red light narratives into empowering green light narratives, you cultivate resilience, positivity, and motivation. So you're going to navigate the challenges of being a musician through understanding your fear in music. So let's unravel some of these aspects of fear that musicians often experience, from performance anxiety all the way to fear of failure. I often hear the failure before the note even begins. I'm afraid I'll be sharp. I'm scared the tone won't come out in my soft playing. I'm nervous I'll crack or squeak. But if we were just to dispel the fear with key answers to the words like keep the pitch low, trust my air, I'll be defensive in my delivery of tone, that's going to help you. Okay, then there's the opposite way of thinking. There's the fear that we don't want to be disappointed, so we're just going to be overconfident. How many times have we thought, okay, I've got this, but we were worried about everything else in the world other than what we should have been thinking. And this leads directly down the road to destruction. All our fears are wrapped up in the future would-be disasters. Fear is a common emotion that musicians experience, and it can manifest in a variety of ways, such as performance anxiety, fear of failure, or fear of criticism. To overcome fear, musicians must first understand the underlying causes of their fear and develop strategies to manage it. Would someone tell an 8-year-old beginning instrumentalist, this is really scary stuff? And so we made sure they stayed scared for the rest of their life? I hope not. This would certainly become an underlying cause of fear in any young artist. So reframe fear as a learning opportunity. By viewing fear as a chance to learn and grow, musicians can develop a more positive and supportive mindset, which can eventually overcome fear and turn it into fun. Focus on the process of growth and development rather than the outcome. By focusing on the process of learning and improving, we can develop a sense of confidence and motivation, which can help to overcome fear. By understanding the underlying causes of your fear, reframing fear as a learning opportunity, focus on the process of growth, and managing fear and anxiety, musicians can overcome and develop a more positive and supportive mindset to conquer debilitating stage fright. It will always be there. You just have to manage it. In my most recent performance as a soloist in front of an orchestra in Carnegie Hall 2 years ago, I was not nervous for the work I put in. I was prepared and happy. I was simply frightened. I told my husband that. He said, "Honey, are you nervous?" I said, "No, I'm frightened." That I would not be able to bring the composer's intent to the sold-out audience in that specific 20 minutes of time. But as I walked on that stage, my fear dispelled. All I could think of was, "Hi, Carnegie Hall, let me play in your beautiful space." And I saw the cream walls and the round, beautiful arc of that hall. And I pulled in my concentration to the people on the stage, and I became grounded. Here, I was to do what I intended to do, no matter what hall I'm playing in. I will not fear music. Okay, let's see. I have all these things that I find important, and now that I run out of time, it's a little scary. Okay. Knowing your why is chapter 11, and that is so important. But I think I'm going to skip to 12, page 105. Okay. This is fun, guys. Here we go. I'm going to talk about my early story of winning and my early story of losing. This is from my chapter called The Unknown. Because we know stuff, there's what we know and there's what we don't know in life, everything. And I figured, okay, what do we know, right? We know the hall. So in the book, I go into what the hall is. You know where you're supposed to be. You know what you're supposed to play. You know what you're supposed to wear. So I give a performance day checklist, and there's all the things we know. All the things we know. And then there's the unknown. And in chapter 12, as I was writing the unknown, out of it came strategies for the unknown, like how to conquer these things. So I found 10 strategies, and I actually pulled it. It's in the book, but I actually made it into a video. It's a 45-minute video. So go ahead and sign up at the website for the book, which is aosworkshop.com, and sign up for the free 45-minute strategies for the unknown video where you see me talking to you. But right now I'm going to read to you about my personal unknown because it's important. It all began in grade school. The annual solo and ensemble, you know all about that here. The tests and the chair challenges, right? In band, they were purposeful because somehow deep down inside, I knew that skill mattered to me. I even challenged on the trumpet. The thrill of victory is contagious, and through college and conservatory auditions, my life was being paved with dreams and full of determination, sweat and tears and endless hours of joy. My life was just playing the flute. That was all that mattered. Young people, they're constantly built up in the early stages of their musical life. First prizes are handed out in abundance at Saturday morning music festivals, and flute teachers brim with joy at their students' successes. And these days are sweet indeed. until the parents begin to think about their talented child and which direction they should take in their musical life. The lessons became expensive. Youth orchestra auditions become the goal. The participation in all-state program is the most sought-after goal of the year for some musicians. So my early story of winning. For me, the pedagogy of instrumental and technical flute playing turned into lessons of musicality, learning proper intonation and rhythm and technical dexterity and tone production, a phrasing system, and all through the French oral tradition of teaching flute playing. However, over time, the pendulum started to sway in the direction of criticism, and the building up process began to erode as the unknowing process began to build. My strength came from the inside as I worked on myself. I read and I listened and I studied scores. My shell began to harden, and the realization came that judgments from other musical jurors cannot be taken personally. And I should use those comments, as I just said 2 minutes ago, use those comments as my fuel. I just had to make the shift. I remember a time when I longed to play musically with a solid technique and good tone. I was such a beginner. And I didn't want my nerves to get in the way, but they were. But only when I began accepting my musical flaws, working on a combination of things like memorization, things began to work together all at once. I call it synesthesia, right? It's just like the synthesis of it all kind of started to come into play. I won the Music Teachers National Association competition in 1981 and in Phoenix, and I started to get hooked on winning. And I then won third prize in a local competition, and I was happy about it. I was even happy to win a prize, but let me explain further that this feeling was not shared by my mother. My mother told me I should have practiced more that previous summer, and then I might have won first prize. Now, as an adult, I empower others, and I question her criticism. But I was crying. I thought I won third. I thought that was good enough. No, I should have practiced more. Anyway, I forged ahead. It was a third prize, and then a second prize, and then finally the first prize. A trip to Salzburg, Austria. Sponsored by the Austrian American Society of Delaware to attend the Mozarteum Academy. And as I mentioned, the summer with Alain Marion and Peter Lucas Graf was the most formative in my flute playing life. I came home and won more competitions: Friday Music Club, New York Flute Club, Long Island Flute Club. And then the fateful day came when I lost. I was 20. I didn't even make it past the preliminaries in a very big competition that had many, many, many instrumental categories. Every instrument all in one pot, like a future Star Search. I'd never seen anything like it in my life of competitions. And I never even made it past the second round. I hadn't stood out. I was dumbfounded. And then I cried and I kicked and I screamed and I wailed for 3 straight days, both in that town and in the town. And then when I got back to New York City, how could the judges have ignored me? Clearly, I was acting immature. It was yet another pivotal moment in my life, one of the best things that could have happened, but it shattered my ego. My ego had been shattered into shards. But I was so determined to get back up on the horse and ride again, and I rode like the good Western horse rider that I was. In the next 6 years, I won Flute Talk magazine competition, I'm a Hog competition, played with the Houston Symphony, and the NFA Young Artist competition, and I officially crowned myself competition queen. Yes. Well, my Flute Talk magazine competition experience was a memorable one. It gave me quite the unknown twist. After preparing the sonata in E minor by J.S. Bach, I got to the competition only to check the list and see that I needed to play the Bach E major. And I prepared all the Bach sonatas in my assignments from my teacher, Samuel Barron. So, using my powers of memorization and recall, I brought back the correct sonata. 'Twas the night before the competition, and I whipped out the correct piece. Since it shared the same edition, I felt like I was in battle formation. and ready to win despite the blunder that nobody knew about. And that's when I realized that I learned about putting your music under your pillow. It works really well for memorization and skill, and it helps while you sleep. Auditioning for the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra in 1991 was basically a competitive mindset for me. I laugh out loud every time I recall playing my excerpts for memory in a white Laura Ashley dress, prim and proper, at the edge of the stage. "Who is she?" said one committee member in the orchestra sitting behind the screen. "I don't know, but I like her vibrato," Carl Hall said. He was a piccolo player. That was it. I played a final round for the conductor, sat in the chair in the empty stage. 45 minutes later, I was given the title of Associate Principal Flute. "May I please play concerti?" I asked in my negotiations. "Sure," management said. And they did. They let me a couple times. I learned how to play piccolo really well, and alto flute even better. I gained real-world experience sitting in that wonderful associate principal flute chair from age 26 to 34. And later, I realized it was my first out of 3 real-world doctoral degrees. I was always on the hunt for the most challenging musical experience, but it was put on hold for me while my heart and soul dealt with other life matters. 2 weeks before I took the job in Atlanta, my mother died from liver cancer, and she never knew that I played in the Atlanta Symphony. During my first year there, my father passed away from pneumonia and complications from Alzheimer's disease. He was being cared for in a community back home. I was 26 years old. I had my future ahead of me, and all I could do was what my mother had instilled in me and asked of me on her deathbed. She called me over there and she said, "Amy, I want you to do something for me. I want you to go, 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 go." I wanted to invest a little of what money I inherited, so I wanted to invest in myself and into performing in a competition. My time in a professional orchestra meant I had to miss the prestigious flute competitions like the ones held in Munich and Geneva. They were held annually in September when the orchestra season winds into full swing. One day, late in 1992, a package arrived from Muramatsu Flutes, my then flute parent company. They were in Japan, and it was an application to the 1993 Kobe Flute competition held in August. As I read the application, my heart began to beat faster, and my mind began to race, and my palm began to sweat, and I was digging out my competition crown, dusting it off, and putting it back on my head. There was glory to be found in a foreign land. And my visualization began, and so did my planning process. I'd been to Japan 7 times previously with a local chamber orchestra, and I had honed my performance skills every night. One tour, I played 15 Mozarts in 17 days. I was ready. I asked for relief time from the personnel manager in the Atlanta Symphony during the last 2 weeks of the summer. I had to double on Beethoven 9 and play pops, and the answer came down from the maestro, no. According to the conductor, I needed to and expected to stay and do that. My logical mind wasn't comprehending any of it, and in my mind, my solo career was taking precedence. Doubling in a summer concert outdoors was not. So I went back with a second request. I talked to anybody who would listen. I told them perhaps I could win one of the 6 prizes. My flute company was behind me in their emotional support. And finally, thanks to negotiations between colleagues, the answer came down from management, okay, you can go. I proceeded to invest in my journey, and my version of the Olympics was in Japan, and I brought my own accompanist, Paula Peace. We set in our minds the goal of winning a prize, and I had to see if I could do it. Did I still have what it took at the age of 29? I had to rank myself in my own mind and in the great order of flutists in the international galaxy. I began to question, however, why an American would venture forth into the cold, critical world with her naivete and optimism emblazoned on her crown in an international competition. I arrived in Kobe, and at the opening reception of this competition, I heard that this one girl from Germany was going to win. Oh, really? I thought. Arriving in Japan and meeting new friends was a great joy of the trip, and it helped me advance to subsequent rounds. I made it through. They all offered me hints and kind words and listened to me, and I know I would have done the same for them. I went out to the lobby at times to meet the public during the competition, and according to the Muramatsu flute family, they told a story that had been brewing from the public about how Amy Porter brought 3 different flutes to Kobe in one. So they said I brought a wooden flute, and at the time, the mare was not in its original key of D, and it was not in the key that we play it of E. They wanted it in G, and they had it with harpsichord. Very interesting. But I came out and played. Started bending things. And I'll never forget Maxence Larieux kind of keeping his body still as his head turned slowly to Aurel Nicolet, saying, "What is happening with these pitches, and is this good, and do we like this?" Because I was not playing. I was just not using all this, French-inspired vibrato that I knew the viola da gamba had not had. And, by the way, I don't talk about it in the book. I had my gallbladder removed not long before that competition. So for me to practice was very difficult. So I read treatises, by Murray, and realized that the bow was going to dictate my airstream. The bow. Okay, so I did all these pitch bendings and bowings. Then I played Barrio Sequenza. So in the lobby, they said Amy brought a wooden flute, and then she brought her platinum flute. And then, I need a little more water. Then they said, I brought my gold flute for a boom. And so it went. A wooden one for the Mare, a platinum one for Luciano Barrio Sequenza, and a 14K one for Boom Grand Polonaise, all in one flute. It was a beautiful compliment to me at the height of competition. And I truly did pull out all the stops in my sound nuance. I brought the memory of my late father into my performance of Jacques Ibert's concerto. Paula was saying, "Don't do it." I said, "I have to." And I generally played the show that I had cultivated my entire youth. I made it to the final 6 out of 56 flutists from 27 countries who passed into the competition. At the closing ceremonies, the ranking of prizes was announced as the 6 of us sat on stage. As we listened to an inordinately long speech spoken in Japanese, I began to wonder what was happening. Gradually, the names were called. I hadn't heard my name when they announced the prizes of 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, then more words in Japanese. I knew this couldn't be good. What was happening? Right then and there, You know, after this time just spent with me, I began assessing it all. I began to reflect on my performance. I hadn't made any technical errors. I had interrogated the featured composer of the commissioned work, Ofer Ben-Amatz, and I knew exactly how he wanted his piece to be played. Paula and I had been inseparable as a duo and unstoppable with our positivity. I was on top of my game, and in my head and my heart, at that moment, I knew I'd won. In the translation to English, it became obvious the murmurs of the audience. It was a fact that there was a tie for second prize, and the jury decided that no first prize would be awarded. The jury, consisting of most of the legendary names in our flute world today, had come to a tie in the voting system and with no American judge in attendance. The American judge had dropped out just before the competition began. I heard my name called. I smiled, walked the long walk, and graciously accepted my framed certificate, along with a doll inside a box. However, the universe wasn't done answering me yet. As I returned to my seat, I heard my name called again as the winner of the prize for the best performance of the commissioned work. I was deeply thankful because the music had been my mission and my journey, and I'd won 2 prizes at that. As I sat on stage in what could have easily looked like a beauty pageant, I looked out into a crowded auditorium with a sincere smile and sent up this prayer. Dear God, thank you for these prizes, and remind me never to do this again. Later in the final reception, cultivating the politest voice I could muster, I set off in search of the judges who perhaps could explain to me what happened to my first prize. Why was there a tie when clearly we heard the mistakes and memory slips from the other player, didn't we? My ego was sounding the alarm. The comments from these gentlemen were, and I quote, "You're an American? Funny, you don't play like an American." To which I said, what does an American play like? But that's okay. "I hated your Mozart. You soaked your appoggiaturas in wine." Take it. You got to take it. "You played well except for your 2-cent choreography." And finally, what saved my career. "You are a beautiful musician. Just go out into the world and play the flute." I thanked that wonderful man, now a retired professor in Germany, and I began to breathe into reality. I realized something else profound. They never thought about my nationality. I'd pulled it off, being judged solely on the music. I'd appealed to just about everyone's musical taste. I tied for second prize with the favored at the opening reception, now a wonderful colleague of mine in Germany. It allowed me to share the experience with my students for life. I realized she and I were in the same boat, and so we shared our crown for the first time. Financially, after collaborator fees, airfare, hotel, food, whatever I may have saved or inherited, I broke even with the prize money I won. And I wasn't able to play the winner's recital with the orchestra in Kobe because of the devastating earthquake the following year. I was, however, a jury member 11 years later, and that warmed my heart to learn the other side of the experience, and that has served me well as a teacher. Okay, so I'm going to leave you all very within 5 minutes, but I just want to play a little bit for you. Something from chapter 13 about storytelling so that you know about all of the ways you can tell stories. So authenticity is the cornerstone of effective storytelling. And I often get asked, how do you know what to do when? That's pretty much the biggest question. Professor Porter, how do you do that and why? Why and like how? And sometimes as an early teacher, I said, I don't know. I can't even say. But I think about specific emotions, experiences, or themes that I want to convey in my music. So do you want to convey joy, nostalgia, or longing? Only you can create it for them. Another example, if a piece is evoking a hot and sweaty human day, or it might be a story that involves human interaction, or a character in a story, it's up to us to translate that element into the music for the audience. And it can't be done unless the music brings that listener along for the ride. Creating a compelling story allows the audience to engage emotionally with the music. And so the more authentic and personal your narrative, the more likely you are to resonate with listeners on a deeper level. Pan, smelly old goat man, right? Pan sees a nymph in the forest, and he says, "Oh, she's beautiful." And he pursues her. Her name is Syrinx. And he sees her and he starts to pursue her, and she realizes she's being chased by this thing, smelly old goat man. And she says, she's this nymph that can call to the gods, and she can be changed. She can change shape. So she says, "Save me." And so they turn her into a reed, waving in the breeze. And Pan, all of a sudden, he's running, leaping over logs, leaping and running and realizing now that he can't find her anymore. And as he's cutting through the reeds trying to find Syrinx, he realizes that perhaps she's transformed into the reed and he's cut her. And so in his lament, he takes reeds, he strings them together into 6 different tubes that are each shorter, and shorter, and proceeds to make the pan flute. So I leave you with my interpretation, my storytelling of Syrinx by Claude Debussy. Thank you. Thank you so much. These chapters are designed to meet you where you are. Whether you're a student or a professional or rediscovering your sound later in life, this book is for you. And I'd like to just invite to ask if you need any concepts clarified or strategies, just shout out anything, and I'll offer a short explanation or demonstration. And I have the copy of the table of contents for you, so you can pop it into your book. And so I hope tonight's given you a window into what this book offers. It's an invitation to align your technique with who you really are. Okay, if it speaks to you, take it home, mark it up, write in it, and make it yours. And I'll be signing copies right here, and I'd love to chat with each of you. And thank you again to Carolyn Nussbaum and her amazing team. Thank you so much. Thank you for celebrating this launch with me. And thank you to everyone on the live stream. And thank you to everyone here in this room. And I can't wait to meet you all. So thanks again. Thanks. Thanks.